Greetings, citizens, and welcome to another all-new edition of Reverse the Verse Live, the only show whose seasoned taco meat filling tastes exactly better than the real thing. I'm your host, content manager, Jared Huckabee. On the show this week, we've got Kirk Tome and Mark Abent on the show to discuss all things scanning and radar with regards to Squadron 42 and the Persistent Universe in this special Subscribers Edition show. Now, for those of you who don't know what a Subscribers Edition RTV is, that's one of 12 shows a year where we open the forums to questions exclusively from our development subscribers. Now, to find out more about becoming a subscriber, you can do so at robertspaceindustries.com/pledge/subscriptions. But before we get to that, let's go ahead and check out our week in review. Now, last week we had Jeremiah Lee, Corey Johnson, and Gage Holman from the character art team here to discuss their work updating our legacy armors and how they go about clothing and designing the characters of the Star Citizen universe. Now, as always, it was a delight to have Corey and Gage on the show, and they are welcome back anytime they want to return. Over the weekend, we had a special MISC Razor promotion with the EX and LX black and white variants. Now, it's a good-looking ship from our UK ship team and stylish additions to Star Citizen's ever-expanding lineup of spacecraft. Now, I think there are a small handful of variants with exclusive serial numbers still available, but it's also possible they've disappeared in the time that I've been doing this, so check the website now to find out more. Monday saw with it the release of another episode of our weekly question and answer series show, Calling All Devs, focused on player-facing ship modularity, user interface updates, why ships come dirty, and if we're going to be stuck in our seats during quantum travel for the rest of our lives. Calling All Devs is your chance to submit questions and vote on which ones you want to see answered each and every week. So, check that out. Tuesday was Lore Day in the Star Citizen universe, and this week's post featured a new addition to the Plain Truth series of articles called The Fair Chance Fail, where host Parker Terrell visited an old scandal to expose the UE government in its failure to protect OSO-2. OSO-2, which was recently featured on an episode of Lore Maker's Guide to the Galaxy. It's writers, man, they love making crap up. Wednesday was the last day to submit entries to our Arena Commander and Star Marine tutorial contest, which saw lots of great submissions, as well as some, we're just going to call them additional submissions. It was a fun chance to earn yourself some free ships and help the continuing development of Star Citizen in the process. Now keep an eye on Spectrum for the announcement of who won once voting has concluded. Finally, Thursday was the latest episode of Around the Verse, featuring not only a Squadron 42 project update, a ship shape detailing the current work on the Aegis Eclipse, but also a feature pulling the curtain back on the development of our scanning systems. And when we return from our break, we'll be sitting down with Kirk and Mark to answer your follow-up questions about scanning live. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Hello.
And we're back. Joining us on the show today, lead gameplay programmer?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Lead systems designer?
Correct.
Mark Abent and Kirk Tome. How you guys doing, man?
Good. Yeah.
Welcome to the show. This is your first time on the new RTV this year.
I believe this is the first time for me being on RTV ever.
Really? You were never on the old RTV?
Not that I can recall.
Were you on the old happy hour?
Yes, I think so once.
Yeah. I don't remember. And you, whatever.
I don't know. I'm on all sorts of things. I don't remember anymore.
Welcome to the show. Now, of course, if this is your first time for viewing RTV, Reverse the Verse, this is our live question and answer series where we got two of our, we have a designer and an engineer on the show to talk about various gameplay aspects in Star Citizen. Today's focus is the recently revealed scanning feature, which we debuted on Around the Verse yesterday.
Yep.
We will be taking questions for this special subscribers edition RTV exclusively from our subscriber chat up on Spectrum. So if you're watching live on Twitch, log into Spectrum. If you're watching not live on YouTube afterwards, congratulations on having better things to do. But if you are in Spectrum chat, go to the subscriber chat and you can submit your questions there. You can preface your questions with the word question in capital letters surrounded by brackets. That's going to help our good friend Tyler Wicken pull them out from the conversation. Now, before we get started, because every show is somebody's first show, why don't we take a few minutes and tell everybody who you are and what you actually do for Star Citizen. We'll go ahead and start with Mark first.
What is it that I do here?
I know, it's
Who was your daddy?
the cameras aren't even rolling. I'm just asking for me.
Sure.
What is it you actually do here, Mark?
I'm one of two lead gameplay engineers here at the LA studio, and my responsibilities are mostly ship related. So ship systems, getting them functional, making them work, talking to other developers when they're working on anything related to the ships. If something's happening to the ships on the code side, tech setup anyway, I need to know about it, or I have some hand in it, or anything like that.
Okay. And how about you?
So,
What's a lead systems designer do?
well, until recently, I was in the same boat as Mark, but regarding design. So we were designing and implementing ships and ship features. Now I'm in charge of 3 of our Scrum teams. One of them is specific to vehicle features. So in that regard, we're still designing any type of gameplay features or methods of implementation for ships. And there's also a gameplay features team that I'm the product owner of. That is more system, like game systemic features. That particular team right now is working on our group system and how it's going to be integrated with Mobi-Glass chat. And being able to just better work with other players so you can group up and do things together. And then the ship implementation team, which is responsible for actually getting the ships in the game.
No, so you actually got your hands on quite a few pots, as it were.
Yeah, right
I
now.
don't even know how he sleeps.
Well,
3 teams.
I'm at the office a lot less than this guy. He was here
Fair
all
enough.
the time.
Right, I know it's when I first started here. And I was still living an hour and a half away. I used to have to leave very, very early in order to get through traffic because that hour and a half was a normal drive, and then with traffic it would be 3. So I used to get in here at like 6 o'clock in the morning, and I used to come in. It would just be Mark. It would
Yeah,
just be Mark and I would hang out in the morning.
You can't get here earlier than
I'm like,
Mark.
do you also live 90 minutes away? He's like, no. I'm like, oh, you're just here this early? Yeah.
It's only 2 hours away.
It's insane. And it's not that far, which is sad.
LA traffic.
Yeah, LA traffic. Well, it also helps not to get too far off the point, but because we got this distributed worldwide development, the earlier you're here, the easier it is to sync up with
That's true.
European and Frankfurt teams.
Definitely. I mean,
Yeah.
it even takes care of like this stuff because we're doing some things across studios with this mining scanning. So it's always good to come in early and go, hey, we have this problem. How do we sort this out? 5-minute Skype call takes care of something that a email takes 2 days to cover.
Yes.
Yeah, that's true. And also, like you just pointed out, because the ping and scanning system are tightly woven into what the DE team is going to be showcasing with their mining gameplay, it does help to be able to talk to them, especially because they're 2 hours ahead of the UK studio, which is already, are they 8 hours ahead of us?
No, it's only 1 hour ahead. It was 2 hours when they both did daylight savings time differently, but now
I
we're
see.
back to only 1
Okay,
hour.
great.
When I get in at like 5:30, it's like 2:30 over there.
Welcome to discussion of time zones.
Yeah.
I'm your host, time zone manager Jared Huckabee. All right, now both of you mentioned scanning and mining in the same breath. Now I do want to emphasize that they are different features. The scanning
Correct.
feature is much bigger than just mining. The scanning feature is, besides being an integral feature to Squadron 42, Scanning feature is just as important to the persistent universe. You're not just using it with mining. You'll use it for exploring. You'll use it for discovering uncharted areas of space, and you'll use it in missions and all kinds of stuff. And scanning will be an incredibly big factor outside of just mining.
Right.
For the purposes of this conversation, we have two of the gentlemen who worked on the scanning portion. As you just said, the DE team is focused on the mining portion. So while a little bit of mining discussion might slip in here and there, I do want to emphasize that this is a discussion about scanning. We'll do our best to have a feature on mining, on its own, because it's a feature that deserves its own focus.
Absolutely.
In the future.
I think one way to kind of talk about this in light of like the work we're doing is we're really working on the pinging and scanning features as the latest additions to 3.2.
Gotcha. All right. So in a nutshell, I know we just did a whole segment on it, but because it just came out yesterday, and not everybody has been around, maybe not everybody's seen ATV yet. Give me the dime store version of pinging and scanning.
Sure. So like in the game, like especially in the PU and what we'll be implementing into Squadron 42, you only have information about entities that are just around your ship in your passive radar. The exception being the quantum travel points because they're so far away. So it's oftentimes rather difficult to know about things that are outside of that radar distance. So what we wanted to do was give you some idea of, hey, are there objects around me that might be interesting to me? In this first tier of our pinging and scanning feature implementation, we give you the ability to do a ping. So you have a ping item on your ships now, and when you do a ping, it basically sends out a 360-degree ping that gives you some general information about objects that are outside of your passive radar radius, but within this new larger ping distance. So when you do a ping out, basically what you're doing is you're searching for signals, so EM, IR, and we just implemented something called RS, which is the resource signature.
Gotcha.
So when you're able to detect those signatures that are outside of your radar distance, but within the ping distance, you get back some basic info about these entities, and we represent them as blobs. So the entities that you detect will be put together, if they're close enough to each other, as this blob entity that gives you a general idea of like where, like in what direction these things are, but not exactly all the information that you need to know specifically about it. So they're kind of like breadcrumbs. And then when you get these bits of these blob identifying markers, you can then make a decision to go, you know what, I want to check that out. So you can fly toward it, and it will resolve when it gets within your radar distance. Right now, we're implementing a feature in which you can actually do a more focused ping. So what that'll do is it'll give you better resolution on that particular item. If you focus enough and it's within your within this larger range of ping, and the signal's strong enough, then you'll actually get the same information as if it was in your radar. So it could be really far away, but you do a general ping, you kind of know where it is, you start focusing your ping on it, and if it's within a certain distance and the signal's strong enough, you'll get for that ping duration an actual like position and some data about that object. So you'll know if it's a ship, you'll know if it's a mineable rock, and those are the two things that we have implemented so far.
In our initial tier 0 implementation. All right. Now we've actually got a treat here. I honestly can't remember if I told you or not, but we do have a clip of kind of the entire flow of scanning as it applies to mining in this case.
Cool.
So I'd like to go ahead and play that, Tyler, and if you can see it on the screen right here. And why don't you tell us what we're looking at here? So obviously we are flying in this looks like a prospector based on the HUD.
That's
here.
correct. Yep.
So we're flying a prospector. Tyler, why don't you go to move the control over the chat so we can actually see the video? Okay, thank you. There we go. All right. So we're flying along the surface. This looks like Stellan to me. You've got your standard prospector HUD up above. Is there anything specific that we're looking at right now as to scanning?
I don't believe so. I think we're right now looking for targets. I don't
And how would you identify a target here? Like,
so far,
okay.
we're getting some
go-
of the AR markers.
Okay, so go ahead and pause right here, Tyler. Now, I see this rock is discolored, or it looks colored slightly differently.
I don't think that is the particular feature we're looking for yet.
Okay.
I think, because I haven't seen this video yet,
I know, I really should have played this for you.
that's fine. We'll probably get to a section in which we go to the scanning or the mining UI.
Okay.
I think that's where we'll see the
right,
the
let's go
highlight
ahead.
for the particular.
so-
There we go.
Yes,
All right, so
this is
pause here.
The scanning.
All right, so we just switched to the scanning UI here.
Correct. This is actually as I stated before, we integrated scanning into the mining UI, and so this is the mining interface, and it utilizes what we've implemented as far as scanning is concerned to give you the composition of that particular rock.
Okay, and some of the information that we're seeing here, we're seeing the power transfer graph. Again, this gets a little too into the mining stuff. We want to stay away from the mining
So,
stuff.
like what we implemented is the info that's on the top right. It gives you the percentages of composition for that particular rock, so that you can determine whether it's worth mining in this case.
Gotcha. You're talking about the mass field there, where it shows titanium and
Right.
It's the mass
and
field,
quartz.
the other portions. You could think of it as the scanning is, the whole infrastructure is, you have some object, it could be the ship right here. It has 4 layers of surface information. Depending upon what the thing is, it's very detailed to that particular thing. For the mineable rock, I think it was the mass and then some properties about what determines the gameplay aspects of when it will break and stuff like that. Then you have the extended information, which is your detailed information, which is for ships, it will be your crew, your weapons, your cargo, but for the rock, it will be the actual contents of what's inside, and that's the stuff that you see on the top right, how much gold's in there, how much just dust or whatever the core insides of it are.
Yeah.
So that's what we're seeing on this part.
Yeah. So we have 2 levels of scanning. They'll happen in serial, but the initial information is rather easy to get. And then you'll go into a section in which, after time elapses and you've hovered your cursor over the target that you want to scan, you'll get that real simple surface detail, and then the surface info, and then you'll go into the detailed info dump that you get from basically like focusing in on that target.
We can clear the clip now, Tyler. Thank you.
And one thing to note too, with like the mining UI, we know the very specific information that we're going to pull. So we organize it specifically to the mining infrastructure to basically give you information that'll help you just break the rock and cover information. There is another UI that's getting worked on, which is the pure scanning, where if you technically scan anything, it shows the information more generically versus surface versus detailed. So when you unlock stuff, you get whatever that thing is. It's like, here's some information for you. While the mining is more specific to what the gameplay around mining.
Right. And we're implementing the bits of information you get for each entity type per entity type. And so we do need to take some time to determine exactly what info you get from, say, a ship versus a rock.
Gotcha. So, and that's one of those things that will obviously iterate over time.
Right.
Regardless of however this very first tier 0 implementation goes out to you guys, it will be like any other aspect. We'll put out tier 0. We'll see their feedback. We want this information on the ship. We want this, and then we have to debate that internally. Do we want to give that information?
Right.
What do we want them to have? What do we not want them to have? What maybe do we save for upgrades? Stuff like that. But it's one of the best things about having a live environment in the middle of our game development is we can start with these tier 0 implementations and really continue our development based strongly on what they're seeing.
Right.
Hey, Tyler? What? Our monitor is about to turn off in 20 seconds. Would you mind coming and turn our monitor back on? You just push the button. All right, so we do have some questions coming in from the chat here. The very first one from the live chat says you literally just have to push any button on the back. It's on the back on the right. and that should go away. Thank you. If we didn't say before, Tyler Nolan is heroically filling in for our broadcast crew today. Our normal JJ is out on vacation. Can we? A lot of the scanning we saw in ATV, we only had the clip of the mining, but we saw some great visuals of just scanning space, you know, and the different blurbs that come. It was all three-dimensional. The very first question from the chat says, "Are there any 2D options for scanning?"
Not at this time. I think I'm not really sure how we'd want to like. I'm not sure if it's really great to like limit it to 2D. One aspect we can talk about is we want to be able to represent these blobs and these bits of info on your radar. We haven't gotten to that particular stage in scanning or pinging yet. So that's something that we want to actually, we do show you where they are in space, but transferring that to the radar, because we need to work with the UI team in order for that to happen. We haven't gotten to that stage yet. So I think that's one place where we can represent it in 2D.
All right. Now, in addition to taking questions live from the chat, we also put up a thread in Spectrum like we normally do for the folks who can't be here watching us live. People were able to submit their questions over the last 24 hours and then vote on which ones they wanted to see answered most. The number one question from that thread said, will we be able to jam scanners on other ships in order to mask items of interest from others for mining or detection?
I would love to do that. We haven't gotten to that stage yet. But yeah, I think it'd be super cool if, we had that kind of, that Rochambeau gameplay where you want to do, like what makes this good, and then like what's a way to counterbalance that so you can maybe defend against scanning. Because sure, it's interesting to find out info about a ship. Maybe you don't want that info to be discovered. So implementing things like stealth gameplay, something which would be interesting would be if you had a ship that was really good at being a pirate ship, and you wanted to smuggle cargo, we could make sections of that ship in which they're completely cloaked from that data, or they can put out false signatures if you wanted to say just carrying on slag, for instance.
Yeah, Chris has talked about that gamesmanship for a long time.
Yeah,
it seems kind of obvious, but it does bear mentioning sometimes that you have to design all the ways in which something is supposed to work before you design all the ways in which you're supposed to counteract them.
Yeah, let's get something working first.
Yeah, it seems kind of obvious, but it's in we all get excited. You're all excited for things like pirate gameplay or just straight out villainous gameplay and stuff like that. And a lot of we deal with this a lot of time where folks are like tell us more about pirate gameplay and tell us more about I just want to be a giant ass. That's all I want to do in the universe. And it's always helpful to remind folks that we have to build all the ways in which lawful, legal, correct behavior are supposed to function, and then we'll go to figuring out all the ways that you can circumvent it, you can avoid it, stuff like that.
And one of those ways we're prototyping is the idea, we have the 4 layers of surface information. What if you could spoof it? So pretend we have a ship, and when it appears on your radar, it automatically just gives you the 4 information, friendly, foe, faction, such. What if we had a way to provide players a way to tweak those settings so when it automatically comes up, that pirate ship is actually claiming he's a UEC friendly police ship. And then you look at it and you're like, wait a minute. So you start scanning. It's like, oh no, he's an asshole. He's going to kill me. He's a pirate. I'm going to go run away. So there's some things that we're toying with to get that level of gameplay. And one of those was the transponder. So we're hoping to flush that out in the future. But the scanning stuff is going to bring some fun stuff.
Right. And then like one way we can pretty easily do some of this jamming gameplay is because the pinging system is wholly dependent on signal. If we could either return back lower signals or just give you the ability to be more stealthy, and because your signals will drop to the point where they're not detectable even by the ping, you just won't show up as part of a blob when you do the ping out.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about that calculus. The ping goes out, and obviously I don't know how much of this will be in the Tier 0 implementation. Let's just talk experimentally here. The ping goes out, and you're in space. So you send a ping out, and the ping hits Mark's ship. Now I imagine there has to be some kind of calculus involved. What is his what are his EM transmissions like? You know, to determine whether he's going to show up, how strong, how much information is going to show up. You know, whether he's going to show up at all. Kind of like that. What can we talk about like that? Is that something that's being thought of now?
Yeah. So we did it really simply.
For Tier 0.
Right.
Tier 0.
Well, I think this is just the best way to kind of understand how our signals, like the signal strengths and distances work. I think in the past, maybe that was a little bit obscured, and it was kind of hard to figure out, you know, if I have 1,000 EM, what does that really mean? So what we did was we just have a fall off of each signal unit over a meter. So if you are emanating 1,000 EM, it drops down to 0 at 1,000 meters out. So you have this radius of signal that is constantly falling from your position. There's your passive radar range, and if this is you, and then this is like, say you can look out 10,000 meters. If there's a ship whose signal fall off is within your passive radar range, it shows up on your radar. So if that ship was emitting 1,000 EM, and your radar radius was 10,000, then at just under 11,000, you should be able to see, meters away, you should be able to see that ship, because the signal from the EM will drop down to 1, but will be within your passive radar. What we did for the ping was, there's a secondary radius that when you do the ping, you can now detect signals that are at 1 or higher, but within this larger radius. Okay. So it's really just a simple calculation of what is your detectable range and what is the levels of signal strength that are without it, and just adding those two values up means whether they're going to be visible or not.
Gotcha. So, and obviously your detectable range will be determined by the sum total of your components and how you're running them, how you've got them tuned.
Correct.
Stuff like that.
Yep.
And then the total of how far you can ping or how effective, will, again, your sensor package, and whether you've got an upgraded something like from a terrapin or whether you've got a less than stellar one and something else.
Right.
I don't want to.
Yeah.
I don't know what ship has terrible scanning. I don't know. If I give a name, we'll have a Reddit thread.
Right, and so like, I think one issue that we need to solve is that we're not great at messaging out all this data to the player, and so we need to once we implement the system, we need to work on the UI so that you can tell whether you're going to be detectable to the player or to other ships, whether that's on your HUD or it's in your signal MFD, and we can give you like some simple, maybe some kind of bar what you need to be under so that you're undetectable by ships.
Yeah.
Well, at least with this value, you know technically how far out someone would be able to see you.
Right.
And if we have that ambient signature, you know, like this is talking about with no ambient signature. So if it's 1,000 EM, I could see that person at 1,000 EM. But if you know the ambient signature is 500, you know you could be, it basically cuts your signature down to 500 because it's subtraction. So now you get that kind of stealth gameplay where if you lower your signature just about right and you know what the ambient is, you know how far out someone could theoretically see you.
Gotcha. And I do want to reemphasize that we're using numbers like 500 and 1,000 as
Arbitrary.
examples. They're arbitrary examples, guys. Before somebody goes in there and theorygraphs how terrible the game will be with only 1,000 meters and stuff like this.
Well,
we're using round numbers to.
We shoot out these numbers just to play around with ideas in our head, and since it gives us ideas of, okay, 1,000, what does 1,000 mean? 1,000 meters, 1,000 EM, it just helps us as a human figure out what's going on in our heads versus what's going in the game.
Right.
Returning back from the live chat, there's a question: how can we defeat active scanning? Is there an E-war mechanic coming? Obviously, like we just said, you want to build the system first before we figure out all the different ways to defeat it. But one might imagine that a scanner suite would be susceptible to an EMP, just
Sure.
like anything else in the ship.
Yeah, you
cut the power to the ship, you cut the power to the scanners.
Sure, you should be able to shut it off. There are other subtle ways we could do that in which, because again, this is just simple math as far as your detectability. If we have a way just to reduce your signals, or at least reduce your detectable signals, and have a reduction in what what your ship is emitting, that could be one real easy way to give you that kind of a way to counteract that being able to be pinged.
This next question, you already mentioned this. Are we going to have the option of a shallow but wide angle ping versus a narrow but deeper ping?
That's exactly what we're
said that.
planning right now.
Can we talk about how many different versions are in our tier 0? We're talking about one wide and one narrow kind of thing?
No, I think it's like it goes up to 128 times, which is just and I think it goes up by factor of 2. So 1, 2, 4.
So it's like a slider. Then. You'll be able to
Right.
you'll be able to adjust.
So
It's
that-
like 360.
It starts at 360.
Yeah, 180.
I think it's 180,
And 180.
and then it starts going
90.
down to smaller increments. I think might be the next one. I'm not exactly sure what our increments are, but we'll have
More than
think,
2.
Yeah.
I think 8 levels of scanning in which the angle of your detectability the things that you're detecting becomes more narrow, but the reward is that you're able to get results back from further away.
Okay. Now, when you narrow that angle, can you then also angle that around the ship? Does it always reduce to the front and you have to turn your ship?
You can, but yes, you turn the ship to do that. I think what we'll be able to do is for ships that have the ability to have a scanner that's on a gimbal, like sure, or the Aquila is another one, that you'll be able to do these pings and scans directionally without having to turn the entire ship. That's the whole point of that.
Gotcha. From live chat, will all ships be able to scan?
That's a decision we haven't made yet, but any ship that has a ping or a scanner item on it should be able to.
Sorry, Argo pilots.
We'll see.
The entire Argo owners club, go make a thread. No, I just pulled Argo out of my butt, people. Just, what will make from back from the thread where the people voted on questions? What will make the scanning skill-based that you can improve yourself in?
That's a good question. I think there is an inherent skill in that because you do have the ability to do narrower scans. It obviously reduces the angle which you can detect things.
Goes farther.
Right. So you can one feature we're having is that you do the general ping. You kind of find out the blob info, and then you can focus on those blobs, do narrow scans, and get more info back. And that is one feature that we're implementing at the moment.
And one thing to note with the blobs is when you do a 360, your resolution isn't that good. So if there's a bunch of objects here, the blob might be just gigantic thing. You have no idea what's inside of
We
it.
saw that with the images with all the different
Yeah,
blobs.
you could see some big ones in the distance. You don't know if there's one object, a dozen objects. So it's like you do that low resolution, you see a bunch of things, you have no idea what's in it.
Yeah, we're still balancing this, but the general idea is the lesser signal you're getting, the larger the blob is,
Yeah.
because you're getting less deterministic info about exactly where that entity might be.
And that's where changing your focus angle to focus in comes in, because if all these things are on the table and it's just a gigantic blob, and then I do a focus angle, it'll cut through, and maybe I'll have 3 blobs now. I'll have one for that, one for this, and then one for his drink. So the more you focus in, the more odds that you're going to resolve what it might be and shrink down the blobs.
As far as the different components, from the live chat it says, will scanning capability be based on a scanner type, size, like some of the other components? Like the component system we have size, we have class, and we have grade. Will there be size, class, and grades of scanners?
Not for the first tier, but that is something that we'd want to do for the future. Simple things like the how powerful the scan is, how great the resolution is, how much power they use. When we eventually get to being able to damage internal items, you know, how much, how many hit points it has, what their wear is going to be. These are all things that we'd like to do.
Like an industrial class scanner,
Sure.
can do more charges per hour without wearing them down. But
In theory crafting, you could even have something where if you have a less powerful scanner, maybe you can't pierce through a capital ship. Maybe it can't pierce through the shields. I mean, there's all sorts of fun stuff we could try out.
Gotcha. Can you scan people?
That is part of the plan for the future. We do want to be able to use the ping so that you can detect life forms as well. But sure, like, you know, I want to know what's in your pocket.
I could just see spending half my time doing internal scans to see if somebody's on my ship. Has somebody jumped onto my ship? Okay, good. Like every 5 minutes, has somebody jumped onto my ship?
The fun part about this whole scanning system is the way that it was designed, at least on the engineering side. We could technically implement this thing that scans anything. At least when we were testing it out, this won't be in 3.2, but we were using actors and items and vehicles and random stuff to scan to see what we could do. And in my testing, I had an actor on the ground, or a player, and I scanned him and I was getting all of his items, and then I put him in a ship. I scanned the ship and I was getting the player, and if in my further testings, I even made it so I could scan further on that actor and get his items. So the system allows us to be flexible in what we want to provide the players, and we've been doing a lot of testing to see what we want to give and what not. But at least for 3.2, we're not going to go that far, but the system will allow it depending upon how far we want to take it.
And as kind of a preemptive move, when this was first prototyped, the UI for the pinging and scanning was on the ship HUD, and we moved it now to the player visor so that we theoretically could just put it on the player and then have a very similar type of gameplay in which you scan. Sure, but you scan the targets you're scanning are people instead of like other space entities.
Gotcha.
And
Yeah.
we'll continue on that too. Is like it's the interesting thing where we're trying to prototype and uncover is like we have this thing called a data bank, and that's the thing that holds all our information of what's active, what you scanned, and such like that. The player has one, and the ship has one. So when you sit down in the ship, all the information goes to the ship, and that relays it down to all the appropriate people. The cool thing is, we're still in the prototyping stage, but if you sit down on the ship and you start scanning something and it stores the information, when you leave, we have the ability to grab that information now stored into the player. So there's some interesting things we could do where you go sit in a ship, you uncover some information, now it's in the data bank. What if we could take this information, put it on an item, and then you could then give it to someone else who could then use that information.
And even like before that, one thing we can do is you should be able to share that same info off to other members of your party or other crew members. And so if I do find a target that I want to attack, there should be no reason why I can't, like everyone that's like in a turret or is controlling some other weapon can't be given that same info. And then it should show up on the radar, and then we need to work on the HUD so that you should be able to message, hey, everyone attack this guy.
Yeah. There's absolutely no shortage of work for our UI team.
Yeah.
There are many teams who work tireless hours in Star Citizen's development, and the UI team, I don't know if they work the hardest, but they're definitely up there as far as busy.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
I mean, every aspect of the game requires some UI element. So they touch every single aspect. Yeah, you actually touched on the follow-up question I was going to have when you said you feed the information to the ship, and then the ship can feed it down to the crew members.
Right.
Which was a neat idea, which sparked a question about how, I think you just answered it, where you do the scan and everybody in the turrets automatically gets the information.
Sure.
And stuff since it's appearing on their helmet visor. The next question from the live chat says, would we be able to share that information out with other ships, in our group? Like we're flying a posse.
Sure.
And one of them is a Terrapin. Like, okay, Terrapin, you're responsible for the scanning. So the Hornet and the Saber and the Freelancer, they don't have to worry about scanning. The Terrapin is doing all the scanning. Can you feed that information to the other ships?
Yeah, there's no reason why we can't. So Like I mentioned, the other team, the gameplay feature team is working on the group system, so there is no reason why once you populate your object data bank with some info that you can't share it to other members, including other members that aren't in the same ship, that are part of the same party.
That's cool. I know it seems like such a scanning. You say scanning, it doesn't seem like a real sexy feature, but I'm
What it can provide players
I know,
is just going to be like huge.
I know it's. I'm sorry. I don't often kind of fan out here and whatnot, but seeing these baseline features that just open up so many avenues of gameplay gets me.
That is like right now for 3.2, we're just getting like the base core stuff in, but we're designing it with all these ideas in mind that we could try out this stuff. It's like, all right, the information that we're storing, all the scan data, is so lightweight and tiny that we could transfer it to other players. Then the question becomes, how do we do that? And then that's when we can start playing with it. Oh, we have this fleet system now. Let's start using that to send information. It opens up. Yeah, I can't wait.
Plus, like getting this information and encapsulating it into like this item that's in your object data bank allows us to do gameplay like, you know, what does selling of information mean? What does data actually mean as far as a commodity? And so we could, you know, a mission could be go find out precisely what the coordinates of this target are, and then you know, come back to me with that info, and I'll give you some UEC for it.
Then once we have it working, we find out how we break it.
Yeah, I know.
How could someone
There's a lot
of
corrupt
that.
the packets? How could someone change the data?
Yeah, half the questions that are coming in are people wanting to know how to break it.
I mean-
Can we send out decoys mimicking an asteroid-rich environment?
Why not?
The way
Sure.
that the data, we call it encoding, once the data is encoded, we don't have any information of what that target is anymore because we're supposed to be able to have this information offline. So if you have a way of disrupting the data or falsifying the data, there's no way that other player would know. So it opens up that interesting gameplay if we could unlock that somehow.
Unless they somehow had a better scanner suite than your decoy scanner suite. You know, it's always a game of
Cat and mouse.
cat and mouse gamesmanship. It's, you know, like you said with the decoy. You know, I get a grade C asteroid decoy thing that I put out there, and it transmits like it's an asteroid and is designed to fool.
Sure.
It'll fool all sensors grade C or below, you know, that it thinks it's an asteroid. But if I come in with a you know, I upped my power plant so I can afford a sensor grade B, you know, I'm going to see that asteroid, but it's going to be a little fuzzy. It's going to be a little like, this data doesn't quite look right. And if I have an A, it just tells me that's a decoy, you dumbass. You know, kind of thing. Again, I'm theory crafting here, but that's the kind of gamesmanship that we've been talking about.
Yeah,
over
that
so many
seems
years.
super mean, but
Yeah.
but it's just data. So yeah, there's no reason why we can't give you the ability to manipulate that. So you know, we could do things with hacking. You know, you can't spoof that data by hacking it, or you can maybe even hack the actual the data you get back from your own scan, and so you're spoofing it on an item level. Which would
Or
be cool.
even more theory crafting. What happens if you scan something you're not supposed to? You have the information, and then someone comes onto your ship, corrupts all the data because you shouldn't have that information, and then leaves off into the night. It opens up some fun possibilities.
Actually, you know what? You brought up a point too. So one aspect of scanning that we have scheduled in the future is, you know, I don't oftentimes want to be scanned, and so we need to inform anybody that's in a ship that's being scanned that, hey, you know, someone's scanning you. Right now, the ability to scan is automatic, but you know, alarm bells should go ringing as soon as you're being scanned, because it's usually kind of a threatening gesture. So if you have, you know, a huge pirate ship that's scanning the contents of your cargo bay, I kind of want to know that information.
What about the difference, a big sci-fi trope, the difference between passive scans and active scans? You know, a passive scan that might not let the recipient of your scan know that they're being scanned versus, and it returns a little bit of data,
Sure.
versus a active scan, which will return a lot more data, but inform the person
Well,
that
that
they've
kind
been
of goes
scanned.
with the idea of the transponder that we're toying with where it provides the information, but if you turn it off, you have to actually scan it to uncover it. And that also goes into the gameplay of if you falsify it, that's how someone could go, oh, he's not a UEC pirate, or he's not a UEC, he's a pirate.
And we can like also allow you to either like marking these items or the categories of items as active scannable or passive scannable, or and then even allow gameplay in which you can actually change the status of that type on your ship by doing things like, you know, getting a better jammer, or having a ship that inherently has more stealth capability in that regard.
Right now, I'm just thinking about flying around the universe with a fake transporter a transponder that says I'm Tyler Whitkin. I don't know why. Who doesn't want to be Tyler Whitkin?
I was waiting for a
Tyler
response.
Nolan has some
Yeah.
thoughts about that. All right, what else we got? We are fast approaching the end of the show, guys. We're flying through this. Let's see. You're doing great. You're actually covering quite a few of these questions ahead of time. Will scanning be attached to the ship HUD or the helmet HUD? We already covered that. It's the helmet HUD. Assuming you can ping and scan objects on planetary surfaces, but can you ping and scan below the surface or inside buildings? I'm assuming if we're talking about being able to scan inside ships at some point, being able to scan inside buildings wouldn't be too far a stretch.
I think that's something that we'd want to implement, and you know, I think we'd want to do other interesting bits of that along with that feature, like you know, maybe it is harder to penetrate buildings that are of like stronger material, and give you some kind of some gameplay that isn't just, you know, is a scannable or not.
Okay. Here's an interesting question from the live chat. Will there be a delay between pings so that you can't just spam pings?
Yes, it's part of the ping item itself at the moment. We haven't quite gotten to balancing that yet. Obviously, when we're developing it, we want to be able to ping as quickly as possible to see the results.
Yes.
But yeah, that is a feature in which there'll be a cooldown time so that you can't go crazy with the pings.
And at the same time, I mean, we're toying with the idea of if you ping, maybe you spike up your power a little bit more. So if you continue to do it, maybe you're going to drain your power, and then someone's going to go, hey, there's someone pinging over there. Comes up to you, but you're not prepared because you have no power.
Maybe your overall EM emissions go up with each ping.
I think that'd be the
Ideally, you
easy
want to
way
wait
do
till
that.
your EMs go down a bit before you ping again.
Right.
Otherwise, you're just broadcasting your own location.
Right, here I am. Like, but that, you know, that's the whole push-pull gameplay mechanic of, yes, you're getting information back about the things you want to find, but you're also making yourself a vulnerable target by announcing to everyone that you're there.
So to piggyback on the notion, and again, this isn't in Tier 0 of being able to share your scan information with other ships. Assuming we get to that point, you know, we've talked about how that's our intention, our desire. What do we think about the possibility of combining the information, like you're like, here's the Stanton system, you know, Terrapin 1 is in this quadrant, Terrapin 2 is in that quadrant, well, you know, all scanning and then sending our data so they all show up in some kind of collective
I think that makes sense.
map.
So at least in the scanning and coding section, I've already been anticipating like merging stuff together. So when you basically encode the information of something that you have unlocked, we timestamp it with the server time. And so when we merge stuff together, we try to make sure we get the latest information. So if someone scanned Stanton 2 days ago versus someone scanned it an hour ago, when you merge the information, we're going to have the latest. So combining stuff is definitely part of the infrastructure, but how we go about doing that from a gameplay standpoint, well, when we get there, we'll probably have to scratch our heads to say, all right, we could merge it this way and that. And yeah.
Sure, but like having like a database that represents, you know, the sum total of all the info you want is, I think, totally desirable.
And it does have to happen, at least for the player and the vehicle, because they, like I said, they have two data banks. If we have two sets of scan information, we have to merge them somehow that makes sense to the player.
Sorry, you started laughing because I was laughing, and I wasn't laughing at what you were saying. I'm laughing because at the sheer number of questions of people that just want to want to know how to defeat scanning. it's like these people are excited about the scanning system, and they should be. But there's so many people that are like, yes, but how do I beat it? This person wants to know about Aurora cargo boxes that can shield from scans. This person wants to know about the effectiveness of things like the Eclipse or the Hornet Ghost and being able to avoid scans and stuff like that. It's exciting to me. It's just, again, remember.
Balance. I mean, if you have a ship that's supposed to smuggle stuff, you want to be able to hide it so when someone scans it, they're not going to see it. But at the same time, if you're in a section where you have a very high-powered scanner, you should be able to detect it if the appropriate gameplay settings oblige, because that's the idea of balance push. You have your way of hiding, but someone has a higher way of detecting. It's going back and forward. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of iteration on it to get that feel and fun out of it, but it's going to come one day.
Yeah, I think I can see that our first goal after getting this basic scanning and pinging in 3.2 is find a way to tie it to missions. So you want to be able to use your ping to generally find out where a target might be, and then as you start doing more focused pings and then eventually scan it, that will be the mission completion, because you got basic info of where things are, and then now you're trying to find out which thing that you found is the correct target.
And that's scanning to complete a mission. I was actually talking to. I'm so bad with names. Oh, Luke Presley. About the possibility, and again, nothing committed, but the possibility of using scanning to find missions, like messages in a bottle, kind of like the old ICC missions where you went into the building and you found something that triggered a mission.
Sure.
But instead of it being in the same location every time, it's an item out that spawns randomly throughout space, and missions that can only be found and begun through exploration and through scanning.
Yeah, a simple way you could do that is if we make an emergency transponder, right? So like it's somewhere in space near Stanton, and so go fly around it, around Stanton, do your pings. You find some maybe worthwhile candidates for the targets. Eventually you resolve one that you scan, and is that item you're looking for, and that spawns the mission for you.
Will scanners use a utility hardpoint? Are they? Is there a physical item on the exterior of the ship?
Currently, they're internal items, just like power plants and shield generators.
Now, ships like the Aquila have a giant scanner suite that comes up out of the top.
Correct. That's not fully implemented. In fact, the implementation we have, people know it's just a turret without any weapons on it. But I think we'd want to implement it by putting it on the actual turret item.
Yeah, the tier zeros get it flushed, put it on a location.
There's a little Hollywood fakery to get the system going.
I mean, that's what we've done with systems in the past until we're actually able to get their actual physical location. So further out, yes, you're going to have locations on them, especially the one you just said.
The Aquila, you don't want to try saying Aquila?
We have too many.
I don't know if
Aquila.
Well, I don't know if it's Aquila or Aquila. I guess Aquila sounds like Dracula, but
I was going to say, my rule of thumb: if it sounds like tequila, you're correct.
see. Regarding externalizing these items, I think that my personal opinion is until we get the ability to damage internal items, we need to get to that step first, because I want to be able to knock out people's power plants and the shield generators from outside the ship. And I think when we get to that point, then whether the scan item is defeatable by shooting the scan item that's internal on the ship, or by destroying the turret itself on the Aquila, will be a thing.
I think it goes back to get it working, and then worked towards how we could break it and move it around a bit after that.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
One more question. I think we got time for two more. I want to try to squeeze in here. What about we've talked about being able to alter the range, you know, either from 360 down to 360 in kind of a short range to, you know, 45 degrees in a farther range kind of thing. What about altering the type of scan, like for scanning for heat versus IR versus EM versus stuff like that?
Yeah, so something we have tiered up in a future tier is you do want to be able to filter out the results. And so, yeah, if I'm only looking for a resource signature, give me the ability to go in my radar and go, the ping is only for resource, please. That is something that we have planned and we'd love to implement, just not for tier 0.
Yeah. And I would imagine if you're going to filter, you get like maybe a better resolution result for that thing.
Can be.
Yeah, I was saying. I mean, why else would you filter something down? If it's all the same results between filtering and not filtering,
sure,
you might as well scan for everything, just
right,
in case, so something's coming.
I think the filtering will probably be on the not what you actually get as far as the results of the ping, but more the info that you see. So I want to filter out the everything but the resource signatures. And so you kind of get rid of the other noise that you may not be looking for.
And last question, it's a bit ahead, so I don't expect to have an answer here, but what do we think about different atmospheric or spatial effects that will affect scanning, like the old Star Trek II, I'm in a nebula,
sure,
so sensors don't work. Or this person's I'm down on Daymar and there's a sandstorm, coming.
I think the ambient stuff is right up that alley.
That ties up with the ambient. Mm-hmm. We have a ambient system that's not quite into the game yet, but future. It's like on the planets you would have different levels of different ambience, infrared, EM. That's basically all over in pockets, and there was the idea of having the ecosystems have different levels so that when you're on the planet and you're going over and scanning stuff, maybe different things appear because you're in a swamp, there's heating up pits or something that increase the ambient temperature, versus if you're in the top atmosphere, there's more stuff than if you're below. But if you're below, maybe the cross-section increases because that's how you hide in the planet. But yes, there are things we're toying with the ambient system.
I think maybe one simple way to look at it is the ambient system would almost be like the reverse effect of what you might, how the math works. And so say something, some point is emitting like 1,000 EM. What that may actually mean is that it reduces the EM detection by that amount for things that are just around it. So they act as a mask. Yeah. Exactly.
So if going with that, if you had a pocket of like sand, maybe it increases the cross-section ambient noise a bunch. So if you're inside of it, no one could really find you.
Yeah, and that's ultimately the gameplay we want to accomplish. Like I want to be able to hide behind an asteroid, or I want to fly near a star, and that makes me less detectable for EM or IR. But I'll probably melt. But hey, you want to do the Kid Icarus thing? Yeah. Go for it.
Yeah. Right now, all I want to do is Idris versus Idris in a nebula. After years of getting used to scanning, after everybody's like living and dying by their scans, and then these situations that blow the results out of water. Like, I can't tell what's what.
Sure.
And being forced to, get everybody used to this and make it a normal everyday part of their life. Scanning is integral to everything, and then you find ways to take it away and obscure it and make interesting gameplay. All right, well, that about does it, guys. We're going to play a short video, and when we get back, we'll do the wrap-up, so stay tuned. I'm excited. This is a thing we've wanted to do for so long. I'm so happy we get to end our 2017 with this. We are going to pick here, between us and with you guys watching at home, the next Drake ship to enter the ship pipeline. You are going to have your chance to vote on 3 options to be Drake's next ship to enter our pipeline. A one-man salvage starter ship, no drones, but plenty of onboard storage to help with EVA salvage operations.
When you don't have to care about operator safety, you can explore so many more options.
Also, it fits in perfectly with the Drake family. You just need one of these guys in there for the small fights to just go in and cut out what's important. It just makes perfect sense.
Drake competitor to the Constellation, the rough and ready multi-crew Explorer. It differs from the 600i by its crude basic construction and from the Constellation by its lower missile count.
I feel we don't really have, with any of our ships, but would totally fit Drake, would be sort of a broadsider.
Like what I was thinking about was exactly what you said, having everything on one side, all the firepower on one side. It just creates this high risk, high reward gameplay.
Right, finally, viewer's choice. 3 more choices that you will vote on today, right now, in this show to be the 3rd option that we then send to the entire community for the next week. So, Scout Carrier, right off the bat. Drake's capital ship entry. Space to park and store a few medium or large ships, like maybe up to a Freelancer Max, and transport them around the verse. A star lifter, capable of transporting ground vehicles from space to ground and back, but not much else. Unable to fully land with the underslung vehicles, think a Russian transport helicopter that would pick up tanks. And the 3rd option, a medium storage runner, the herald of cargo running. Big engines for fast point-to-point travel with a moderate amount of storage to offset the speed. Somewhere between an Avenger and a Cutlass in SU capacity, great for getting goods from A to B fast. For those of you wondering when you can vote on these 3 ships, the salvage ship, the multi-crew Corsair, or the Scout Carrier Kraken, that vote will go up later today. That'll go up as a comm link on the RSI website, and that will be open and available to everybody from later today to December 11th. So we'll be collecting your votes there. So with that, thank you so much, Elwin. Thank you so much, Matt Sherman. Thank you so much, Matt Venturi. I hope you guys enjoyed it.
I did.
That
was fun.
And thank you for tuning in, guys. We'll see you next time.
And thank you for supporting
Caviar.
the project.
Absolutely.
That beard will never come back. Ever, ever, ever.
Aw, I miss it.
Well, that about wraps up this week's show. A special thanks to Mark and Kirk for taking their time out of their busy schedules to be here with us on the show this week. Some quick housekeeping before I let you go, though. The Hercules Star Lifter promotion is still going. If you somehow missed either the Ship Shape segment, the full RTV dedicated to it, or the Q&A posts, you can learn all about it now on the robertspaceindustries.com website. And then on Monday, you can come right back here for another all-new episode of our weekly question and answer series, Calling All Devs, this time featuring responses to your backer-submitted, backer-voted-on questions about life support on spaceships, how to tell people apart without name tags, potential changes to the Freelancer, updates to the stats of the Constellation Phoenix, and a chat with Clive Johnson about the continuing work on network bind culling. Man. Only in Star Citizen would a chat on network bind calling be considered exciting content. I love you guys. You're the reason I do all this. Most of you, anyway. For Calling All Devs, I'm Content Manager for Global Video Production, Jared Huckabee. We'll see you next week, everybody.
Thanks for watching. For the latest and greatest in Star Citizen and Squadron 42, you can subscribe to our channel, or you can check out some of the other shows, and you can also head to our website at www.robertspaceindustries.com. Thank you very much for watching.